Sunny today, highs in the mid-70s at the beaches to the lower 80s inland. Welcome to LA. It is 56 degrees in Inglewood. With your front page news brief, I'm Dominique DiPrima on KJLH 102.3 Radio Free. It's 4:41 in the morning, and we have the pleasure of having on the show today an activist, an author. Maybe I should let you, Roland Bynum, the teacher, introduce him.
Nope, I'm going to let you do it.
Activist, author, playwright.
I'm going to let you do it.
And
I'm very excited about
Father
this.
of the Year.
There you go.
Yeah, he is a poet, Amir Baraka.
Absolutely.
And he's also my papa.
Yes, he is.
I'm very glad to have him on the show. Good morning. Mitty.
Yeah.
There. Good morning.
Morning. How you doing?
I'm good. Good to hear from you. I know you're always traveling around and you know, performing and reading and working. So it's nice to be able to connect with you on the air.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I'm here in Oakland. We're doing a play of mine here, and with David Murray's music, and we're rehearsing for the next couple of days. So that's what brings me here. You know, it's going to be performed in May here in Oakland at the Eastside Cultural Center.
Which play?
So it's a play called the Sisyphus Syndrome. It's a play I wrote a couple of years ago, and it's well, you know, Sisyphus was the the Greek myth, the son of the wind god who was sentenced to die, and when death comes to get him, he refuses to go. So the gods, or whoever that is who had the power, sentenced him to roll the rock up the mountain, and then when he rolled it up the mountain, they would roll it back on his head. And that's what Du Bois' character as the Black Liberation Movement, the struggle of the American people to be free. That was something like the Sisyphus Syndrome. Every time we made some real progress, that the powers that be would try to roll it back down on our heads. Hopefully never as low as before, but certainly like how after the whole 60s Black Liberation struggle, then you had a succession of Reagans and Bushes and Clintons that would really be sort of instrumental in rolling that rock back down the hill. So it's relevant to our time.
Yeah, no doubt. Sometimes it seems like the rock rolls lower than it was when, before you started rolling it up. But
well, I hope it didn't get that low. We'd be back in change. But yeah, it seems like that. I mean, certainly these last 8 have been pretty terrible,
on Friday was the 40th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King. And it's
right.
It was a big gathering in Memphis, a lot of people talking about it. And one of the things that I found out really a lot more this year is that when I'm talking about folks here in Los Angeles, do not have a really strong grasp on African American history, the recent history. We can talk up to you about ancient Egypt and the creation of civilization, but sometimes, especially when you are talking about recent history, there's so much misinformation and different living characters running around telling different stories that it can be even confusing. I wonder if you want to reflect a little bit on Dr. King and also kind of point people in directions as far as finding what you would consider to be authentic or, interesting, useful books about our recent history.
Well, if I would go back to Dr. King's, works himself for a good understanding of it, because, when King was alive, actually, and when I was a young person, a lot of us didn't go for the nonviolent aspect of it. We thought that was not correct. We were following Malcolm X, and so we thought that anything that talked about nonviolence was actually, or turning of the cheek, was not what we wanted to lead us or guide us. But at the same time, Dr. King was a brave and courageous man who took some very progressive stances. And if you read some of his books, like Why We Can't Wait, for instance, or just look at his speeches, you'll see that his stance was actually a little more progressive than we might have assumed, being young and sort of wild. As a matter of fact, it's interesting that when Dr. King came to Newark, New Jersey, where I lived, when he came there in the Poor People's March, the day he got there, I looked out the window and there were, say, crowds of people coming up both sides of the street where I lived on Sterling Street. There were helicopters, there was police, there were, hundreds of people. And I thought maybe the police were coming to lock me up. But, the doorbell rang, I opened the door, there was Dr. King standing on my step. And it was interesting that even though he had heard that I was certainly not, in favor of the nonviolent thing, which is kind of silly ultimately, because we've always been nonviolent. The violence has been pushed on us. Still, he came to see me, and interestingly enough, what he said this about the same thing that Malcolm said. Because I've met Malcolm about a month before he died. I met King about a week before he was killed, and he said the same thing. Talked about a united front, a black united front, and you can see that's still very relevant today. We need a black united front. We need to get the various kinds of ideologies and organizations who really mean our people something positive, to be able to come together in some kind of ways, at least objectively, to fight against our enemies. So it's still very relevant.
Okay, Brother Baraka, this is Roland Bynum of Radio Free KJLH, co-hosting this week with your beautiful daughter, Dominique. And
yeah, how you doing?
Hey, brother, just fine, man, and I'm really thrilled to be able to speak with you and be a part of this program this morning. I want to ask you this question because we're looking at a presidential election in 1960, during a very conservative time here in the United States, and of course we had Nixon and Kennedy running for president. Kennedy being the first Catholic, the first white man running for president of the United States, being a Catholic, and the revolution wasn't televised. And you decided to take a bite out of the forbidden apple. You went to Cuba. What motivated you, and is it important that you take that step?
Well, I went to Cuba in 1960. I went to Cuba the year after the Cuban Revolution, actually to celebrate the first year of that revolution. I was invited by the Cubans. As a matter of fact, I took Langston Hughes' place. Langston was supposed to go, but he couldn't go for some reason, and so, they called me and asked me would I go, and I said sure. I was, anxious to see what was happening because I had been following the whole progress of the revolution, and when they marched into Havana, myself and a group of poets wrote a little book called For You, dedicated to Fidel Castro and Los Barbudos. And going there was important to me to see, what actually was going down. And it was probably the most eventful thing in my life because my own politics changed. I was a young poet during that period, talking about, I'm a poet, I don't know anything about politics, even though the Civil Rights Movement was, 1960, was, taken off.
Yes.
I mean, what was it, 58, I think King had successfully led that Montgomery bus boycott.
That's correct.
Yeah, so 1960 was really a kind of transformation for me. And because I saw young people who had actually led a revolution. And I wrote a long piece called Cuba Libre about that trip. And it was interesting because when I came back from after a week down in Cuba, I came to Florida. We came into Florida and read the American newspaper and said Cuban celebration rained out, even though there were hundreds and hundreds of people from all over the world. Not only Latin American intellectuals, but European intellectuals, people from all over the world who had come. And I actually got a chance to meet, Fidel Castro and Che Guevara, and, Juan Almeida, who was the Afro-Cuban chief of the army. So it was a very transforming trip for me. I mean, I went down with people like Robert Williams, the great leader from North Carolina, who was in the midst of struggling against the Klan, and Harold Cruz, the writer, Sarah Wright, the novelist. There was some Julian Mayfield, the novelist. We went down there, and it was very important for us, and certainly myself.
Did you see any black people when you were down there?
Did I see any black people? That's what I saw. Did you see any black people when you were down there? It's an ongoing controversy on this show. One thing about Cuba, the further east you go, because we went from Havana into Oriente province, into Sierra Maestra. We went up into Sierra Maestra where Fidel Castro spoke, and he spoke for about 2.5 hours in the sun before a couple of million people standing up, sitting down on the ground. And it was, like I said, it was a transforming experience to see not only him speaking and to try to understand him in my high school Spanish, but to see the people, the kind of, the farmers and the young people, just transfixed by what he was saying. Plus we had, young intellectuals from throughout Latin America, and those are some of the people who actually helped transform me. I rode on a train from Havana to Oriente. It was a 12, 14-hour ride, and was constantly being, questioned about my own political direction. So it was a great trip. I think my two heroes for the 20th century are certainly Malcolm X and Fidel Castro. And even though Fidel has so-called retired, if you read some of his missives from Cuba, you'll see that he's not gone anywhere.
Baba, what about this question of people staying in power for 100 years? I mean, we look at what's happening in Zimbabwe, and it seems like a mixed bag because a lot of great things have happened, in Zimbabwe. But I wonder about people like Fidel Castro or Robert Mugabe who, seem to just stay in office forever. What about, democratic changes of leadership?
Well, it depends on what the people want, to me. See, the whole thing about term changes, that they talk about in some places in the United States, like, that's not necessarily a good thing. It's a good thing if you want to get rid of somebody. But like Aimé Césaire has been the mayor of Port-au-France in Martinique since 1945. Wow. And those are elections. I think if a leader is positive and the people concur, then there should be nothing wrong with that. I think usually people talk about term limits when they want to get rid of somebody. I wish there was a term limit for Bush of about 1 hour, because we already had that. But no, I don't think term limits automatically is a good thing. It's like everything else. It depends on who it is and what the people say about it.
4:55 in the morning.
I know, for instance, about Mugabe in Zimbabwe is that the British and Americans are hammering him about the land. They're trying to make believe that he's disinherited some white farmers down there, but in reality, that land is owned by the Queen of England. Was owned by the Queen of England. They had it. They occupied that space. but that land never belonged to those individual white farmers, and Mugabe, gave